The chronological crawl. As we've discussed, the third round interview, more than the others, can be a modular, choose-your-own adventure. There's a section for the project, a section for other questions, the reference check prep section that we'll discuss in the next module, and for senior level positions, the chronological crawl. What's the chronological crawl, you ask? It's a methodical, position-by-position crawl through a position's professional career, from their first job to their most recent, where you ask them the same exact questions for each position listed. Before I explain how it's structured and works, let me say that I'm continually amazed at the data that comes from this kind of interview. It's a time-consuming interview, sometimes upwards of 2 hours if someone has a lengthy professional career and you ask every question for each stop along the way. But it's a fascinating look at someone's career arc. Often there are themes that don't appear another way, or certainly not to the same extent and clarity that they appear when conducting the chronological crawl. There have been times when candidates bring up roles and activities that they didn't think were important to include on their resume that ended up being directly related to the KSAs we were searching for. There are other times when you see less desirable themes, like the lack of an internal locus of control, meaning everything that went wrong in someone's career was someone else's fault. The chronological crawl is time-intensive, but has seldom not been worth the effort. Much like the third round project, you should give candidates a heads up that part of the interview will include the chronological crawl. The good news for them is they don't need to prepare anything in advance since they know all of the answers already. Before starting this portion of the interview, it's good to confirm that the resume that you have on file for them is their most up-to-date. It's also helpful to include that, in the interest of time and a lot to get through, you might interrupt them occasionally to move on, as you want to make sure to leave enough time for their most recent experience. I often add that they shouldn't take that as a negative if it happens, just that part of my job is to pace us so that we get through everything. Hopefully this puts them at ease if and when it happens. I then explained that I'll pull from the same 6 questions for each position on their resume. These questions include 1. What were you hired to do? 2. What was your greatest success in the position, the one that you're most proud of? 3. What was your biggest failure that occurred in the position? 4. What new skill or skills did you need to learn and use in that position? 5. How do you rate the team you worked with? Why? As an aside, I often ask them once about what traits they think high-performing teams, however they define that, demonstrate. In number 6, why did you leave the position? However, unless you're positive that you'll have enough time to complete this entire process, you might want to include that you'll likely not ask all 6 questions for the position. I tend to ask all 6 questions for the first and last position listed, and then determine how many of each to ask for all of the other roles by balancing the extent of their work history. Do they list 10 positions or 3 positions? With the time we have remaining. Again, you'll definitely want to spend more time with their most recent roles than you do with those earlier in their career. And then the length of the answers. People speak in different length arcs, so if someone is more of a long arc answerer, you'll need to calculate this into your timing. From there, here's how the chronological crawl goes. Before diving into their work history, I usually like to warm us up with a question or two about their listed educational experience. However, to be consistent, I skip this part if not every candidate at this stage in the interview process lists something for educational or certification experience. The questions I might ask here are, what was a high point of your educational experience? What was a low point of your educational experience? When you left school, what did you think you wanted to be when you grew up? Be mindful here to say left school instead of graduated, as not everyone graduated from each piece of schooling they include. We then swing into the role earliest in their career and begin the chronological crawl. After a position or two, you'll start to see patterns. Use these as they emerge to decide which of the 6 questions to ask for each role. Again, you want to ask all 6 for the first and last role, but use your judgment as to which of the 3 to 6 to ask for all the other positions. For you to be listening as actively as possible, this part of the interview works best for one member of the hiring committee to be asking the questions, while another member of the hiring committee is taking notes. When you get to the end of their career crawl, I often ask the person taking the notes if they have any questions for the candidate that stood out for them. Usually they have 1 or 2 questions from having listened to the entire exchange but not participated that prove quite insightful. Conclude this portion of the interview by thanking the candidate for their fortitude. This often can feel like more of an endurance sport, so take a quick moment to thank them, and then take another moment for everyone just to pause for a minute or 2, take a drink, and catch their breath. From there, you can move on to the next section of the interview if this isn't how you're ending round 3. As an extra credit project for you, complete a chronological crawl of your own professional career. Preferably have someone else use the questions to interview you. 2 main reasons for this. The first is it will give you a feel for the stamina required, both for the interviewee and the interviewer. The second is, with the help of your partner, you'll start to identify themes in your own answers. You'll begin to identify those questions that yield more useful data, and ones that can only be asked a few times. Plus, you'll get to practice something that might be helpful the next time you interview for a job.